Welcome to MP Access. My name is Gina Galusha. I'm the Executive Director at 5 Star, part of Mortgage Point. And today we have with us Caroline Gim. This is actually our second conversation. She and I chatted last time at Velocity, and it was such a good chat. We were like, let's do it again. Welcome.
It was great.
First, tell us about your background. How'd you get where you are, and what did that road look like?
Okay, so I grew up in the business, essentially. My mother has been a real estate broker and a loan officer, and for a brief period she had an appraiser's license as well since the early 1980s. So she's been doing it for quite some time, and, we grew up in the business. I joined her in about 2003. So I've been working now with her for, what years? About 23 years now. I started off kind of doing loans because at the time my mother was like, hey, I've got all these buyers and I don't have time to do these loans. Can you do it? Now, in high school, I was actually a loan processor. So my mother had all of these loan officers that were great at originating files, but at the time, things had to be typed on a typewriter. And these guys, really, processing was not their strong point, and their in-house processor was so overwhelmed that they would ask my mom, hey, your daughter's pretty smart. Do you think she could do some of this? And she would bring home files, just stacks of files with handwritten loan applications. And if I finished my homework on time, I could just do all of the loans. So I would finish typing up the entire application. I would calculate the income and the expenses and all of that. And then I would give them a full file. And these guys loved it. So when I started with her, she was like, hey, do you want to do some of these loans? And I said, sure, why not? Why not?
I already know how.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how I got started in real estate. It was supposed to be a temporary gig. I originally started off working in the entertainment industry, and the money was so good that I thought maybe I can continue doing this. And then eventually the market changed where a lot of the borrowers who were getting loans, well, when we ran the numbers, they couldn't buy the houses. Or the opposite, a lot of people who were homeowners were starting to lose their homes and they could not refinance. And this is probably back in 2006, 2007. And at that time, one of my mom's one of her agents, she's a broker, was suggesting, well, why don't you do a short sale? And I said, what's a short sale? And the way that he described it, I thought, this is the exact opposite of a loan. Instead of proving that someone can buy a property because they can afford it, I'm showing that they cannot afford to keep this home any longer because their income doesn't support the cost. And instead of saying it's worth X number of dollars, now I'm saying it's worth Y, and these folks are upside down. So we would negotiate with the lenders to take a short payoff just to be done with it, because either way they were going to lose money, and they could either lose a little bit less money with a short sale and have a property that they don't ever have to take possession of, or they could end up foreclosing. So I did a lot of short sales.
I thought at first you were going to say, this is just like origination. There's so much paperwork.
That's also true. I'm excellent at paperwork. So it was really easy for me to do, and it was a smooth transition. And at that time, that was all my focus was short sales. And then I started to lose 1 and 2 and 3 files where they ended up foreclosing. And then I would see this property come on the market as an REO months later, sometimes even like a year or two later. And the value was less than we had offered the bank as a short sale.
But of course.
And I was getting so frustrated. I said, well, I'm on the wrong end of this. So I started reaching out to some of the banks. And I said, hey, do you need an agent to help you with the foreclosures? And eventually, one of the banks that I was doing short sales with, they really liked me. And they said, hey, why aren't you working for us to sell our properties? And I said, I applied. You guys were full. And that client was the one that gave me my first shot. Yeah.
So really, it kind of came down to, this is what I think I've experienced with you often, is you see area of opportunity and you're like, why not?
That's pretty much
Let's go for it.
Yeah, I think my mantra is usually, why not? If it's something that I think I can do, or that I'm doing kind of tangentially already, and I can just transition over and make a shift, why not? If the business is there and I can do it, I don't see why I can't be doing it.
It's true.
Yeah.
how do you attack the learning curve?
That's a good question. So the learning curve for me is, my personality style is I want to know everything. So when there's something for me to learn, I get super excited. And I probably spend too much time learning, but I want to know all of the ins and outs because that's how I get to feel comfortable with it. And really for me, I feel that if I can teach it, that means I understand it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel as though, being former educator, you learn it even better when you can teach it.
Absolutely.
Because you have to think through, how do I explain this? And then you have to go learn it a little bit more.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So who do you teach now?
Who do I teach? So I think it's kind of weird, but a lot of our clients, some of our clients require us to train other agents. So for example, when we work with HUD has a requirement that we do a monthly training class to other agents to teach them how to sell HUD homes specifically. And that's because the process is unique. And they don't want to exclude a good portion of the market because the agents are too terrified to submit an offer. So we will teach other agents on processes. And essentially, we could see it as we're training our competitors, but it's also a room full of people where I say at the end of the class, I would much rather work with you on a transaction than somebody who is like not getting this training, and then we have to handhold their entire way. And then we also do trainings for clients. So, we take it for granted. We assume, the clients know everything, especially with REO. And they know a lot, don't get me wrong. But the thing is, they are in Dallas, Texas, or they're in Denver, Colorado, or Salt Lake City, wherever they are, and they've got files all over the country. How can anybody keep up with that? So a lot of times I go out and I travel and I'll visit clients, and then I'll say, hey, can you get your employees in a room? We'll do, like a lunch and learn. We'll cater a lunch, and then we'll train everybody. It might be new procedures or new laws that are going to be unique and specific to REO properties, or things that you need to know, new regulations, and then we'll go in and we'll train our clients as well.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
I'm sure they appreciate it.
I hope that they do.
So speaking of HUD, you are looking into another new next step with HUD. Tell us about that.
The HUD certification?
Yes.
Yes. So, this is another thing. I'm a member of a lot of trade groups, and one of the trade groups is like, hey, become a HUD certified counselor. And I thought, why? But if nothing else, it really helps me to become a more well-rounded agent so that when I'm talking to consumers, I know where they're coming from. I know the rules that they need to follow. Same goes when I'm working for the consumer and I'm sending a file over to a client. I also know what they need to be on the lookout for. So really, for nothing else, you give me an opportunity to learn, and I want to learn.
It looks at it from another perspective,
it
right?
Definitely
so
does,
you
yes.
understand it from a different pair of shoes, and that's going to help in all the things you do.
Yes, right? Never hurts to learn.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, when did you learn how to fly a drone?
When did I learn how to fly a drone? I tell people I'm very slow to any technology. I go kicking and screaming into anything. But with drones, I don't even know why I decided to. The very first, that company DJI, when they had their first big drone out, it was called the Phantom. For whatever reason, I bought it. And we had a
Was this
runner.
like a late night Instagram scroll after a glass of wine or something?
It was way before Instagram. I think it was probably another agent highly recommended that we get it.
Ah.
Yeah, so we had the drone, and I didn't fly it, but, some of our field inspectors did, and they were young guys, and they loved it. But eventually, I learned how to fly one, and I carry one in my car, and I use it so often. And I use it for silly things, but it's incredibly useful. So I'm not perfect, and people think that I'm some crazy drone operator, and that's my specialty. No, it's just a necessity, and I find it very, very useful and practical to have.
So tell us how you use it.
All kinds of ways. So, obviously people assume, okay, you use it for marketing. And yes, I take my own marketing footage a lot of the times because, especially selling REO properties, you have a very quick turnaround. So you don't have the luxury of hiring someone who's going to go out when he goes out and return the footage to you when he returns the footage to you. So very least I'm out there and I've got my footage. So I'll take marketing photos, but I use it a lot for inspections. So if I'm doing an initial inspection and I see any suspicion of like a roof leak or something, I fly my drone up in the air and I take some close-up footage. We take photos, we'll take videos and things like that, just to see what we're looking at. And then sometimes I kind of float it up and I take a look at the landscape, like what's around there. And I'll be like, oh, that freeway is awfully close. Or, you know, hey, there's a property I have now. And I'm like, wow, that Amazon distribution center is awfully close to our property. And it's good to know because then I can let the clients know that. And then I can also provide them the footage. I've used drones for occupancy checks. I've used drones for...
Do you have footage of the occupant being like, you know, is this the alien takeover?
No. I'm not doing it to be invasive.
Right.
But there was an instance...
I just can imagine, you know, you're in a house and you're just like, what is that sound?
Yeah. I mean, if I think I'm going to be, you know, disrupting someone's privacy, I'm not doing that. That's not my goal.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But there was an instance in Southern California when we had what we called Snowmageddon. And there was so much snow in the mountains. They literally shut down the roads for 2 or 3 weeks because there was so much snow.
Wow.
When I could finally get up to the mountains, we had been assigned a new property. And when I arrived, it was downhill from the street. And there was so much snow. And I thought, and I had brought snowshoes. I had brought my snowboard pants. I was ready to go. And in some of the areas where I did walk, it was like thigh high walking in snow. And I thought, I don't want to go down this hill. I don't know what's supposed to be on this driveway. Turns out there was a car in the driveway. I would have hit it. But what I did is I took my drone and I just kind of floated up and I did an occupancy check. Plus the fact that there was a lack of footprints kind of told me something. But yeah, we were able to do an occupancy check doing that. Or if, you know, one time I had a dirt road. We get properties kind of in the boondocks sometimes, and we're going down 2 miles of dirt roads, and I don't have a 4-wheel drive or anything. So if I get stuck, and once I got stuck and I was like, I can't go any further down this road, I pulled over, I parked, I pulled out the drone, and the drone went the rest of the way for me and did the occupancy check. And I could see dogs in the yard, and I was like, occupied, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, like, sometimes we have properties that are not safe to enter. We had one, it was a manufactured home that had been burnt out. The windows were blown out. I could tell that the steps going up to the front door were sketchy, and I just didn't feel safe. So I was like, hey, these windows are blown out. I sent my drone in through an open window, peeked around, I looked down, and yeah, the floors were gone. And then like I actually backed out. So that's when my entertainment industry, my film school education came into play. But yeah, like if there's an unsafe condition, I don't think any client's going to say, hey, we still want you to go in.
Go walk on those floors that don't exist.
Right. But at the same time, like we need to give them a full picture of what's going on. So what's better than that? So things like that, like I think our clients really appreciate, because I'm not saying I'm not gonna, but I'm not gonna. But at the same time, you need the info, so I'm going to get you what you need. I'm just not going to put myself at risk.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll find a way.
Yeah.
I love that. So what other things, I think we've talked about a lot in the past of things that you kind of just do a little bit different. You find a way. You are a strategic problem solver. Any other things that you find really helpful that you kind of stumbled upon because of an issue?
No, I mean, I guess not stumbled upon, but like what I find is incredibly useful is talking to other agents. So I get so much information from other agents, and hopefully they feel the same way, that I'm willing to share. So like I always offer, for example, like, hey, if you're intimidated by the thought of using a drone, if you're in Southern California, call me. I've got an extra. We can go out and fly them. It's not that big a deal. So make it less daunting. Or if I see something coming up, just last week, I was at a property and I noticed that there was a package at the front door of what's supposed to be a vacant bank-owned property. And I looked at the label, and it wasn't the former borrower's name, but it was the correct property address. And I was like, this is the third package similar to this that I have seen. And they're coming from Spectrum or Frontier. So I put out on one of our little chat boards, I was like, hey guys, I've seen this 3 times. Is this a scam or something I should be aware of? And other agents had the same experience. And some people gave some insight. They're like, oh yeah, they're signing up for something with a cell phone and they're giving that address. And so like they're saying, let's say Spectrum phone plan, and they're signing up for Spectrum internet at this fake house that they don't live in. And so they get a free phone and they get like minutes or something. And I was like, oh, I would have never thought. What
do you do with the packages?
I don't know if I'm supposed to say. I throw them away. Because I don't know how to return them. Someone's like, you can drop them off at the Spectrum office. And I was like, I'm not going to go look for a Spectrum office.
Speaking of safety, what are your kinds of tips and tricks for squatters?
For squatters?
Yes.
Okay. That's a great question. So when we know that a property is supposed to be vacant, I don't know if this is the correct procedure, but I always try to leave the windows uncovered. So I know what to expect. Now, some agents are like, why would you do that? You're advertising a vacant property. And I say, I think the signs in the window advertise that there's vacant property. At least this way, I know I can see in on my way in, and other people can see in case anything happens to me. So if I pull up to the house, and we have some very, very specific procedures to know that we were the last ones in.
Do you leave like the toothpick in the door like in the spy movies?
No, but you know what we do is we will go to the lockbox, the combination lockbox, and when I leave, I reset it to the date. So if today is, February 15th, I will leave the code at 0215. So if I come up the next time and the numbers are all scrambled, it could be legit, but I know that someone else has been into this house. So that's one thing that we do. And then the other thing is we keep all of those windows uncovered. If there's any reason for me to think that something is going on, what I do is I call the office. So I will have them in my headset and I'll say, hey, I'm over at, 123 Main Street. The blinds are down. Can you just stay on the line with me? And they just keep me on speakerphone and they know where I am in case anything happens. So that's probably our best safety feature. And then my rule of thumb for anyone who works for me is do not put yourself in danger. Document what you can and get the heck out of there. And I might be willing to take some risks. My mother, who I work with, she might be willing to take some risks, but we will not let anyone else do it because we can't take that responsibility. Yeah.
When you see that there's someone there, what are your other tips and tricks for kind of getting that cared for?
So we want to gather as much information as possible. If someone is present, we will back up. So I just go back to the car. I'll move the car if needed so that I'm a little bit down the street and I can keep an eye on the front door. And then I call the police and I wait. And sometimes we luck out and they come quickly and sometimes they come really, really slowly. But we always call the police and we say, hey, this is supposed to be a vacant bank-owned property. I'm the real estate agent for the bank and someone is inside. Can you please send someone?
Do you keep good snacks and reading material in the car?
I have plenty to keep me busy. So if nothing else, I'm making a lot of phone calls or I'm checking my mail or emails on my phone. But yeah, there's plenty to do. And I've had to wait, sometimes very long periods of time to the point where I've abandoned. After like 2 hours, I'm thinking, they're not coming. And the police have my phone number, so they'll call me. I think my record is I called them once around 9 or 10 in the morning. I get a call from an unknown number around 9:30 at night. And the Pomona police is like, are you still at the property? I'm like, who is this? It's the police. I'm like, which police? I was like, no, I left like hours ago. So,
yes, I just sat there for 12 hours.
But sometimes, I'm willing to wait. And especially if someone is inside, I will definitely wait for them. And because I want them to go in and they don't always arrest. They should, but they don't always arrest the other party. But at least, that person knows that we're not afraid to call law enforcement on them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So you also work in bankruptcy and with trustees. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How'd you land that?
You know what? I don't remember how I started working with this, but kind of like what I do is I learn a little bit about everything. So somehow I got to know a few attorneys, and I think I had an attorney who recommended me to a bankruptcy trustee. I can't remember the exact steps, but a trustee was reaching out to me, and they were asking me to pull comps. Hey, can you give us a value on this property? Eventually, if you do people enough favors and you're nice about it, they do want to help you out. So that's maybe how I got started with it, but that's what I do for a lot of attorneys is I'll pull values for them. I'll give them an idea, and then if they've got to dispose of the asset, a Chapter 7 trustee is in charge of selecting the agent. So then they give me the opportunity to list that property for them.
Reciprocity matters.
It really does. I mean, relationships are invaluable in our business. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true. All right. So,
yeah.
Now for the gem question.
Okay.
What is the weirdest or the wildest thing you've found in a property?
The weirdest and wildest thing I found in a property. There were so many. And I've heard great stories from other agents. I mean, I sometimes take photos of things and like without any identifying property information. I'll share it with like friends and stuff on Facebook. Mm-hmm. But we did have once a property that was fully boarded. And the windows were boarded, the doors were boarded, everything. And the person who kept coming back to the property was the former owner. And I noticed like every week there would be something different and we'd have to resecure the property. But we went one week and the doors were closed and they were padlocked from the outside. The windows were covered. We had been noticing some damage to the stucco over the last few weeks. There was a hole in the stucco in the wall, and the chicken wire that's behind the stucco had been kind of spread out. We put a camera down into that hole, took a picture, look at the photo. There's someone inside. It was the former owner, was inside the property. And
Why? What was stashed in there?
He was not in his right mind.
Gotcha.
But what he had done is he had been picking up a rock and just going and like banging on the outside, and to the point where like, because we had seen like enough for a hole, but we're like, there's nothing we can do about it. If the hole is big enough, we will board it. And we did board one hole at a point. So this guy was inside. And when the sheriff showed up, we gave them the key to the padlock to the front door, like, oh, he's coming. And someone else is manning that hole. We see him crawling through the hole to come outside, and we're like, he's here, guys. That might be the weirdest thing, but we've got a lot of interesting stories.
Sounds almost like a horror film where you take a picture and you're like, oh, person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I've heard stories from other agents where they're doing an inspection inside of a dark and boarded property, and they get back to the office and they're like, click, 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 click. They don't even care. They get back to the office and they'll see like there was a person in the house, and I think I'm terrified. So
yes,
yeah,
I have heard of being surprised by people in the closet, things like that.
And I have
clothes or
I found people inside of homes before, but you just try to stay calm. That house I'm talking about, the very first time we did an inspection, I was there. It was really early on a Sunday morning, so office is closed. But I work with my mommy. So I called my mother and I said, hey, Mom, I'm over at this property. And this is before the bank had boarded up the property. The city had red tagged the house and boarded it up. But we knew that those boards were loose, and we knew the front door had been kicked in. So we already knew this. And it was a very large lot. I said, Mom, can you just stay on the line with me as I'm walking around? The last thing I did was the house. But as I started the exterior, I'm kind of taking pictures through all the doors or the windows where the boards were loose. Didn't think of it. I went around and I go to the front door and I kind of kick in the front door and I see some stirring in the corner. And there's this man who just kind of gets up and looking disheveled, not wearing a shirt. And I was actually recording because at this point I was doing a video walkthrough. And I'm keeping the camera on and I'm talking to him. I'm like, hi, what are you doing here? What's your name? And he gave me the name of the former owner. And I'm like, he must have found some mail. There's no way. I'm so-and-so. And I was like, uh-huh. What are you doing inside here? He goes, oh, I own this house. I said, really? Well, the bank has foreclosed on the property. He goes, the bank has and I was like, you need to go. And I mean, I only felt safe because my mother was on the phone with me. But if that was anyone on my team, I would have been like, you should have gotten out of there 20 seconds ago. What are you doing? So I had a conversation with him. I didn't try to kick him out. I didn't even call the police. I was just like, we just need to figure out what's going on. And I left. But I had this, I still have the recording of my interaction with him. And I gave the client a screenshot of what this guy looked like because I would have thought for sure he's a homeless guy. And then after talking to the police, they're like, oh, yeah, that's the guy. And, I sent them a photo. I put a little, thing over his face because, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to share that with him.
Right.
But I was like, yeah, this guy's inside, and he says he's the former owner, and he's got the name.
What a good adventure.
Yeah.
So what do you love about this work?
What's fun about this work is even when it's kind of miserable, there's an end to it. But you end up with so many good stories. My friends love to hear my crazy stories. Some of my friends love going to properties with me. I have a friend that when we...
It's like a ride-along?
It's a ride-along. So, I live in Los Angeles area, and I go to Mammoth to go snowboarding. And it's a 5-hour drive, but we're driving through a lot of neighborhoods. So I'll be like, hey, if I'm in that direction anyways, let's go see a house. So my friend's always down. She's like, oh, let's go. And she has seen some crazy houses with me, and she's like, I didn't even know this existed. And I was like, hey, stick with me, kid. We're going to see some stuff. Yeah. And I would tell her, I'd be like, if I ever had to bury a body, I'm pretty sure I'd come out to this area and do it.
Not that you ever would.
Not that I ever would.
No. But it kind of speaks to your entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. You like a good story.
Yes.
You live in a good story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true.
So, it's fun. There's never a dull moment. Let's put it that way.
If you were talking to a rookie, mm-hmm. thinking through your years in the industry,
yeah,
what's the number one piece of advice you'd give them?
Never be above anything. Be willing to get your hands dirty, be willing to learn, be willing to, accept mentorship. And in fact, I think mentorship is a very big deal. Mm-hmm. I work with my mother. She's probably my biggest and best mentor, but just going around and meeting other agents that are at conferences, people who are so much more successful than me, I would just follow them around like a puppy dog. And anything that they would share, I would be just riveted, and I would listen. And I don't even know if they realized that they were my mentors, but in my mind, I'd be like, oh yeah, this person is my mentor. And every so often I would reach out to them. I'd be like, hey, can I buy you a coffee? Can I take you out? Or we would see each other at conferences. I'd be like, hey, can we have breakfast together? And I would just listen to them. How did you get started? What do you do? How do you staff? How do you handle these situations? If you're nice about it, people are more than happy to share. And I feel that I am the same way, Now, if people are newer in the business, they ask me hey, how do you handle this? This is what I do. I don't know if it's the right way, but this is what we do.
Right. It's a good learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you seeing in the market in California? Are you seeing more short sales come up? I've heard from some of the servicers we work with that people are calling asking about short sales.
We are definitely seeing a lot more distress activity in general. So whether it's a short sale or even REOs starting to pick up after the foreclosure, we're seeing more of those. And for a while, everyone thought, oh, no one's going to lose their house because they have too much equity. And those underwriting guidelines were so strict. Everyone's on a 30-year fixed. We are starting to see a lot of people who are defaulting. And their equity is getting eaten away because, the values are not quite what they are. Plus, once you start skipping payments, your principal balance starts climbing. So their equity is getting eaten away. Or the big thing that we hear from people is, so I sell this house, where do I go?
Right.
So they just stay put. It's not a permanent solution, but I think they're just so overwhelmed by the thought of, what do I do now, that it's a little bit tough for them to stomach.
Yeah, because everything has risen in cost.
Right.
So where do you go?
Yeah, and the interest rates have gone up. So if you have a 2% interest rate where you are, where can you go and buy something now that interest rates are 6%? And pay less. Yeah.
Totally. Okay. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on or wanted to share?
No, I think I just want to stress that this is really, it's a people business. It's a relationship business. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Do not be afraid to give help. Volunteer. If you're unfamiliar with an organization or you don't know people, volunteer to help out, get to know people, ask questions, be humble. I think that's the best advice I can give to anybody.
You're so good about reaching out. Like, you'll reach out to me and say, hey, this thing's coming up. How can I help?
Yes.
This is what I know, which is how I knew what to talk about on this podcast. This is what I know. This is what I'm working on right now. Here's the new up and coming thing.
Yeah.
How can I help?
Yeah. And, I think clients appreciate that as well, because I do have clients and I have investors that call me and they say, hey, what's going on in your market? And it could just be like a call. Or I could be like, well, do you want me to pull some information for you? And do you want anything in particular? Are you looking for stats? I've got a lot of anecdotal information. Or if you want, I can put together I'm always willing to help. What is the harm in that? I'm going to learn as well.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, we're so glad that you stopped by the studio while you were in town. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh my gosh. Always a pleasure. Always. And thank you. We learned about drones, which I had not, ever kind of thought through before, and how to do this safely, how to deal with squatters, and really how to build a relationship by being helpful. So we're glad you joined us, and we'll see you next week.